Technical difficulties. All right. Yes, so welcome to this month's NCENN meeting with OETN. I'm presenting on behalf of Sustainable Eastern Ontario, and I'm involved with all sorts of things. So what is the...
I don't see your screen. I don't know if anyone else can see the screen. Is anyone else able to see Mac's slides?
Nope.
No, unfortunately, it's just a blank.
Do you want to stop and try again? In worst case, I can share my screen.
Yeah. Is it working now?
I just see your internet browser. Is that where you have your slides? Because I don't see that up in that. I just see Zoom. Would you like me to share it for you?
I'll do one last try if this works.
Sorry,
by the sounds of it, it does not. So yeah, weird.
Okay. So I'm going to stop your sharing. Okay, how's that?
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll just do it this way. All right. So as you mentioned, I'm McKinley Mazerel. I'm an intern for SEO, and I work for NCENN. And this is a bit of a who we are and an introduction if you don't know who we are. So the NCENN is so here's a brief agenda for today, but the NCENN is a network of environmental groups, big and small, from the National Capital and wider Ottawa region. Our goal is to enhance collaboration among environmental-oriented groups in the Ottawa region and Ottawa Valley, and to help support each other and build connections. NCENN is a project of Sustainable Eastern Ontario, and we are built on 4 pillars: connecting, collaborating, capacity building, and celebrating.
Oh, sorry.
For connecting, through the NCENN, we connect sustainability groups across the region together and foster partnerships on a variety of projects, events, grants, grant research, and various other capacity building projects. For collaborating, along with the NCENN, we have in Alta Vista. We work with various other nonprofits for the Ottawa Energy Collective, a community-led project that aims to have Ottawa be net zero by 2050. And then we also collaborate with various organizations to create sustainable capacity solutions. A one-stop shop for Canadian environmental organizations' capacity building needs through different programs like eco-internships.
I don't know why it went to the very beginning. Here we go.
For capacity building, give me a second. We have helped create organizations such as Greenbooks, a full-service bookkeeping social enterprise that supports the sustainability sector, Eco Executive Director, which is a shared service for administration and executive functions, the Capacity Building Institute, a training organization that provides capacity building training, and Eco Internships, which helps small environmental organizations access wage subsidy programs and interns. And celebrating, we do this through our Sustainability Star Award, which recognizes pioneers and pillars of the community in the environmental and sustainability spaces. We have upcoming events. The Capacity Building Institute is hosting a capacity series webinar next week on Monday. or 2 weeks from now on Monday. And Eco Internships is accepting interns and employers for the 2023-2024 year. And finally, our next NCENN meeting will be June 23rd, and it'll be our spring roundtable with a bunch of different organizations, hosting and networking and collaborating. And yeah, feel free to contact us if you need anything.
Thank you, Mac. And again, everyone, sorry for those technical difficulties. I'm just going to get that now. So for the beginning of our presentations, we're going to start with an OETN general presentation by Laura. And I'll just introduce Laura a bit. So Laura is a professional engineer with a background in building systems and facilities management. She started her career developing and implementing energy conservation programs for commercial buildings. And Laura has had various operational roles in facilities management before joining the Baker Canada as directors of the facility services. And she is now the acting chair of the OETN board. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Jessica. I think hopefully this works.
We can see it.
Okay, great. Perfect. Great. Thanks, Jessica. So yes, I'm Laura, as Jessica mentioned, and I've been on the board for about 1.5 years now and became the interim chair a few months ago. So I'll talk to you today a bit about OETN, our mission, our structure, some of the projects we've worked on, and our current outreach project to encourage seniors to volunteer as advisors. So OETN was founded in 2014 to leverage skilled talent and to support community projects related to sustainability and climate action. So we work with a network of project advisors and also work closely with students in post-secondary institutions. And we have 2 main goals. So first, we support community action on environment and climate change. And we also work closely with not-for-profit organizations in Ottawa, such as community associations, to strengthen the quality and the effectiveness of sustainability and climate action projects that they undertake. And our second goal is leveraging expertise of our advisor network and students from post-secondary institutions in order to meet community needs. And we achieve these goals by facilitating partnerships between the community, the advisor network of approximately 20 advisors, and the post-secondary institutions. And those include mostly Carleton, Ottawa U, and Algonquin. So a little bit more on our advisors. They are practicing or retired professionals in a range of fields who volunteer their time to support local community projects, mostly related to sustainability and climate change. So they can play a variety of roles. That includes like project definition, the feasibility, project planning or project management. They also provide advice and assistance on particular phases of the project. And they can also do some coordination of student engagement, mentorship, and review. OETN has worked on a broad range of projects, and they touch on various aspects of the environment, sustainability, and climate change, including land, water, energy, waste, and education. These are some of our past projects, and for these projects, they're quite they're a model of the way that we do projects. So each of them brought together post-secondary students, advisors, and the local community. So for example, if we look at the Energy Reduction Opportunities Project, that included Carleton University students who researched various potential energy and environmental projects for the Dominion Chalmers Center. We were very happy. We recently received funding from the Ontario Seniors Community Grant Program to encourage professionally skilled seniors to volunteer as an advisor with OETN. And we're hopeful that this outreach program is going to grow our advisor network and enable us to participate in more community projects. So if you're interested in learning more, you can visit our website or email us at info@oetn.ca. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. So we'd love for you to get in touch with us, especially if you're interested in becoming an advisor. I know we have a couple here today, so it's great. And we are also currently recruiting for board members. We're a small board of only 5 members, and so we'd like to increase that over time. So if you're interested in that opportunity, please reach out. And also, if you have any projects that you think might be a good fit for OETN, we'd love to hear from you. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm wondering, does anyone have any questions for Laura at all before we head over to the next presentation? No questions, going once, going twice, sold. Okay. The next presentation is going to be by myself, so I will share my screen. And just to start off, so my name is Jessica Schumacher. I have an educational background in environmental studies and geography, and I've worked in the environment nonprofit sector ever since graduating. I have a strong passion for environmental management and sustainable development, and I'm the shared executive director for OETN, Sustainable Eastern Ontario, Eco-Executive Director, and Sea Change Canada. But today I have my OETN hat on. So I'm going to do a further dive into the OETN advisory. So as mentioned before, in case anyone new has trickled in since Laura's presentation, OETN advisors are practicing or retired professionals in a range of fields willing to, one second, I just want to move my Zoom over here, to share their expertise to support community environmental action. So some roles of the advisors, they help assist in defining projects, needs, and action plans. They provide advice and assistance really in any phase of the project. They coordinate post-secondary facilities and student engagement, and they really act as a mentor to help evaluate student researchers. So OETN has been a nonprofit that's been incorporated since 2014, and we've had the advisory pretty well ever since. We have a couple people that have been advisors since our incorporation, and we have a total of 26 active advisors. That's including some of our board members as well, as they usually will take on a project each year, and they'll focus their time on that. And then to date, we have completed our 53 community projects. So some background skills that we look at for advisors. So there's a broad range of environmental themes. These are some of them, but they're not limited to advisors in agriculture and video production are currently 2 skills that we actually don't have any advisors for. So that would definitely be a void that we would like to fill, but we would be happy to accept anyone with any of the skills listed here. So we look at advisors with the backgrounds in biodiversity, climate, conservation, energy, environmental science, infrastructure, forestry, planning, transportation, urban design, water, scientific research. I'm not going to read them all since it is quite a list, but you can see them here. And if you are interested, you could just email me and I can send you this list as well. And anyone interested in any of the slides from today, I can also email those to you. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of do an advisor spotlight. So the Peace and Environmental News actually conducted some interviews on some of our OETN advisors a couple years back. So I thought it would be interesting just to kind of go over a couple of specific advisors to kind of talk about how they came to be and what projects they've worked on. So the first advisor spotlight is for John. He's been an advisor since 2014. And he became an advisor because he was actually a founding member of OETN with a keen interest in supporting sustainable city of Ottawa. And he also finds mentoring students through this process very rewarding, and he actually enjoys learning from them as well. So for his experience and expertise in the environmental field, he has over 40 years of domestic international experience related to water pollution control and sustainable water management. So he was a biologist. He learned that the importance of using design with nature for sustainable futures. So some of the past projects that John has worked on as an advisor include, but aren't limited to, fish habitat protection, using citizen science to evaluate the health of streams, low impact development to preserve water quality. And he's also worked on some eco tours throughout the city. So all of these projects involved kind of clarify the client's needs in assisting post-secondary students with their research and recommendations. For the second advisor spotlight, it's Scott Barker. He was an advisor since 2020. He became an advisor just from being involved in the Deep Blue Cleanup, which is an NGO dedicated to improving communication and education, supporting plastic pollution. He's also greatly enjoyed working and being engaged with OETN while working with students at Carleton through the Deep Blue Cleanup project, who one of our board members, Lisa, facilitates. And he strongly also believes in the goals that OETN has. So it was a great alignment there. For his experience and expertise in the environmental field, he has a Bachelor in Science and Physical Geography from the UK, and he has a substantial experience in curriculum-linked environmental education, which he did in BC for grades 7 to 12, so high school. He taught ecology and environmental science to youth of that same age bracket, and he has experience working with nature schools, where he's helped deliver curriculum-focused workshops. So some of the past experience or projects that he's had as an advisor were the Deep Blue Cleanup, and working with undergraduate engineering students at Carleton, where he kind of just shared his expertise and knowledge to help guide them through their project. He helped them to kind of describe different short presentations for students studying environmental issues. So as mentioned by Laura, some of the projects completed to date kind of evolve around sustainable land use, stewarding green spaces, water quality and waterways, energy and climate change, sustainable transportation, waste diversion, and public education on the environment and sustainable development. So I put together a list of our projects. I'm not going to read through them all, but just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that OETN and the advisors have worked on. So just kind of naming a few. There is a waste audit and advice for the Gloucester Emergency Food Cupboard, sustainable water management with the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, bioacoustic monitoring with the Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust. They've also helped with project support for external cost research with Gotta Go, stream shoreline cleanup planning with Robots Missions. We've had tree planting advisors for those that want to remain kind of active and outdoors. That was done with the Glebe Environment Committee. And then, yeah, I'm not going to read through this since it's so much, but you can kind of get an idea of what the advisors have worked on for OETN. So for projects completed, I kind of broke down that 53. So we've had 37 of those projects be completed with NGOs, 7 projects that were post-secondary led, 5 with community associations, and then 4 that were just community-led ideas. So here's some of our partners logos down here. So the partners that we work with are nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, post-secondary institutes, retired or working environmental professionals, and then community associations. So as Laura mentioned, we recently received funding from the Seniors Community Grant through Ottawa. So we are currently looking to engage seniors and hopefully bring them on as advisors if they would like to be active in these environmental projects. So you can apply on our website. We have an advisor application form. You can go through that, or you can simply just email me and I can walk you through those steps if you need any assistance. And if you have any questions, as mentioned, just email me at info@oetn.ca and I'll put my email in the chat. So I can open the floor if there's any questions for me as I throw my email in there. Yes, Aida.
Yeah, just clarification question, please. I may have missed it from Laura's presentation. Who are the clients again? You talked about students, and then in your presentation you mentioned NGOs. How does it work? Like who are the clients who can benefit from the advice?
Yeah, so clients, post-secondary institutions, so Carleton, Ottawa U, Algonquin. Usually when it's post-secondary institution, it's usually a class, most likely a master's course, where the course will want to kind of pair up the students to work on a project throughout the year, and the professors will seek out different advisors. So we have that relationship with them. So we've done a lot of work with different courses like that. And then for the NGOs, we usually will partner up with an NGO and work on a community-based project. So as an example, we work a lot with OBEC as they're here, and we'll work on different projects with them. So there was the Canada Eco tour. So that was just like a self-guided tour that was through some trails in Canada. There was a Manor Park tree canopy. So just some research was done on the tree canopy and the Manor Park area with that community association. And that's just a couple to name the few, but it's usually partnerships and working on a community-based or post-secondary course-led project.
Is this free service?
Usually we'll have grants to be able to do this. But yeah, what I can do is if you want to email me the email in the chat, I can speak further with you. We could have like a one-on-one meeting if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Are there any more questions? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll hand it over to Owen. So Owen is a shared intern between OECI and OETN who is passionate about sustainability, conservation, and energy efficiency. And he's going to give us a quick presentation on senior volunteers.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Jessica. I'll just share my screen quickly. How does that look? Can we see it? We good?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, so I'm just going to give just a quick presentation, kind of like an overview of senior volunteers in the environmental sector and just generally. Yeah, as Jessica mentioned, I'm a sustainability intern with the OETN. Kind of my background traditionally is in sort of outreach and communications, but I do a lot of volunteering generally, and I couldn't think of a third thing to do. So I love tomatoes, and this is a picture of me and my first tomato grown last year. So the agenda, kind of what I'm going to cover in this presentation is the benefits of volunteering as a senior volunteer, the benefits of volunteering for recruiters, for senior volunteers, and then kind of just like an overview of the sector, and just where you can find volunteer opportunities in Canada as a senior volunteer. Look at this, the Zoom thing is right in my way. So benefits of volunteering, I think we can all agree that generally volunteering does have some positive effects for your health and mood. Specifically for the older community, some of like what's been shown as the best benefits are things like societal contribution. I think lots of people post-retirement find that continuing to contribute to society through volunteer opportunities are really beneficial. There's kind of things like general improved satisfaction. There have been some studies that suggest that volunteering later in life can actually aid to your health and just general life expectancy. There's also the fact that you're developing new skills, it just shows that even post-retirement, like there's still always opportunities to learn more and experience new things. And then it can also prevent isolation and loneliness, which again, speaking for just not just post-retirees and seniors, just volunteering generally is a great way to meet new people and stay connected with the community. And then I've just got a little a blurb here from a psychology article. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, but just the gist is that there have been lots of studies that show that getting involved in volunteering later in life can really promote well-being, and the organizations generally should be providing opportunities to allow volunteers to satisfy their motivations, because it not only benefits the volunteers, but it also benefits the organizations that are employing the volunteers. So which brings us nicely to part 2, which is the benefits of engaging with senior volunteers for organizations. I think generally what's like the best benefits for engaging older members of the community to volunteers is they tend to have you have access to multi-talented, experienced volunteers who have just a range of talents and experiences that can be really valuable to your organization, and perhaps provides a perspective that you don't necessarily have within your organization. And it also just it brings like bringing in older volunteers along with younger volunteers. It brings in a good mix of kind of people from diverse groups, and just getting everyone's voices in from different parts of the community is really valuable for volunteers, because then you're seeing perspectives that maybe you wouldn't necessarily see from in your own organization. And yeah, from Volunteer Calendar Canada in 2010, they're just saying that it's so beneficial to keep engaging with people who are retired in the community, because they still have contributions to give, and it's such a symbiotic relationship. It's so beneficial to engage with these people because they get something out of the volunteer experience, and then also your organization, through engaging with them as volunteers, you get a lot out of it too. So then in terms of senior volunteers in the Canadian environmental sector, there's been some research out there. I think it does generally show that most seniors they tend to volunteer in organizations such as religious organizations and social services, and they're not as engaged with the environment as they are in like other areas of the community. This study was done back in about 2007, and I think more recently, as environmental issues have taken the forefront, I think there has certainly been an uptake in older people getting involved in volunteering for the environment. But generally, trends still show that younger people are more likely to volunteer generally. And I think when it comes to the environmental sector, you do tend to see a lot more younger volunteers getting involved than senior volunteers. I think that there has been shown that there have been projects in the past with particular Canadian organizations that have attempted to engage in senior volunteers explicitly, and they have been successful. So I think really what that shows that it's not necessarily seniors don't want to get involved in environmental volunteering. It's just there are some barriers to this, which brings us to some of the barriers to engaging seniors in the sector. There tend to be a fairly few like common barriers. One of that is that they feel they lack expertise or knowledge about environmental issues, which I think can, when it comes to volunteering, feeling you lack the knowledge can be a big barrier. Alternately, there's also that maybe the models used by these organizations don't meet the needs of older people who want to use their professional expertise. So it's kind of like on the flip side, maybe they feel like they do have special expertise that is not being used for the organization. I think one of the biggest ones is older people often report being unaware of these opportunities, and I think organizations could do a better job about promoting specific opportunities for seniors within volunteering. And also, yeah, I think just there tends to be the trend that volunteering for the environment doesn't seem to be as fulfilling as volunteering for other types of community needs. So then in terms of Canada, where can you volunteer as a senior in the environmental sector? And the general answer is just anywhere. I think any environmental organization looking for volunteers, they'd be happy to take on anyone. In terms of specific organizations that are trying to engage seniors, Climate Legacy is a really good cross-Canada organization that specifically looks at engaging seniors. And then with the seniors grant, the OETN are looking at engaging more seniors, and then just looking on job boards such as Good Work and Charity Village. They have so many volunteer opportunities, and they often do specifically say if they're looking for older volunteers or just volunteers in general. And I think that is everything from me. If anyone has any questions, by all means, I will stop sharing my screen. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for listening.
So we're running a bit quickly through the agenda. I have 3 speakers who are going to start speaking at 10:50, and 2 of them aren't on the call yet. They're not able to jump on the call until closer to 11. So I thought, yes, Aida.
So I'll take advantage of the minutes you have to make
Perfect.
a comment to Owen. It's not a question, it just, and forgive me, I don't have the exact details or the study in front of me, but I will find it. I read recently about a large survey in the US conducted by Yale, an environmental group at Yale University. They compared the concerns and pro-environmental actions by various age groups. And while most age groups expressed concerns about climate change and other environmental issues, it was surprising to see that the older groups, over like 50, 60, they were more willing to take pro-environmental action than the younger and people in their 20s. So that was a remarkable finding. And the main factor behind this was time. It seems like people in their latter years are more willing to take the time, have more patience compared to the younger generation. So there is a myth out there that the older, and I'm using older, younger, and very loosely, okay? They are not only concerned about the environment, but they are more willing in some cases to take eco action. So let's keep this in mind.
Thank you so much. So Rudy is one of our speakers. He would like to go next because it's a great segue into Owen's presentation. So I'll quickly introduce Rudy and then I'll hand it over to him. So Rudy is a retired senior who is still active in climate action and helping newcomers with their integration into the Canadian society. Rudy is an active board member for Ottawa Biosphere Eco-City and also Friends of the Carp Hills. And I'll give it over to you, Rudy.
Hi, well, thanks, Jessica. I just thought it would be nice to follow up on Owen's excellent presentation. I have to say that as I start, and since we have a minute, I'll tell you this anecdote. Every morning I speak at 5 o'clock in the morning to cousins of mine, one in Queensland, Australia, and one in Wrocław, Poland. And this morning when we were talking, they got into a dispute about how to make Polish dill pickles. My cousin in Queensland feels that it's only with hot water that you can make these pickles, and my cousin in Poland said, nonsense, you have to use cold water. Turns out I've discovered that this is a major issue among Polish people, but anyway, the dispute doesn't matter. But in the end, they had kind of a dust up over this. And my cousin in Poland finally ended it by saying, well, I'm Polish, so if I make the pickles, I'm Polish. They're Polish pickles. Anyway, and I guess I'm eager to follow up on Owen's excellent research by saying I'm a senior, and for 15 years I've been active in this area, and so I'd like to. I guess I don't want to dispute anything that Owen said, really, although I agree entirely with the study that Alicia was just mentioning. Seniors have time. They don't need to be shown how to do things. You know, they have life experience and so on. They have skills. And they're also, I think, particularly important because politicians pay attention to seniors. Seniors tend to turn out to vote, and so politicians are scared of seniors. So if they think seniors are onto, you know, the climate issue, they will go for the climate issue because they want their votes. So I think that's a particularly important thing. And I have to say that most of the time, my problem is not how to recruit seniors to people, but rather I belong to seniors groups. And our problem is how to recruit younger people, because who wants to be in a meeting with a bunch of old fogies like us? So that's more my problem than how to recruit seniors, because every group that I'm on is filled with seniors. Why? Because they're in my age group, which brings me back to the Polish pickles. You know, when I was making up my notes here, I was talking about seniors as we, not as they. And so my thoughts would be that if you want to recruit seniors, the first thing to do is to get seniors to do the recruiting, because just like every other group in society, they're eager to meet with people who are, I don't mean to say like them, because I don't want to say that they, you know, have to look like each other. But anyway, they're eager to meet other people who are generally in their age group and who are interesting to talk to. So the way to get seniors to join your organization would be to get among your advisors, say Jessica, to have a recruiting team of seniors, rather than trying to have, you know, no insult intended, but you know, to have you young looking people trying to recruit seniors is different. I mean, I'd like to see other people who are kind of my age saying, this is something I've been doing and I find that interesting and worthwhile. Our experience with Friends of the Carpills particularly is that we have a lot of people who are prepared to volunteer for concrete, manageable tasks. My experience with recruiting seniors is that they're not interested in open-ended things so much as, you know, with Friends of the Carpills, we have people who walk trails, people who monitor turtle nesting boxes, you know, people who assess whether the you know, who walk the trail and you know, check whether people have been wandering off the trail, which is a major issue because our trails are through ecologically sensitive areas and we want to keep people on them, not wandering off them and so on. Nice cat in the background, by the way, Jessica. The other thing I would suggest is that you offer opportunities to couples, because couples, you know, people often, well, husbands and wives like to go out walking together, for example, or, you know, tasks that can be done readily by couples would be, I think, attractive to a lot of people. Maybe that works more if you're working on things like the trails that we're working on with Friends of the Carpills, for example, but you know, concrete, manageable tasks. And we have many more people who are volunteers with Friends of the Carpills than who are members of the organization. You know, we have people who are volunteers and who donate money to us, but they don't want to be members of the organization. They don't want to go to the AGM. They sure as hell don't want to be on the board. But they're glad to go and, as Owen was pointing out, get the validation of making a contribution to the community, but with manageable tasks that they can, you know, that they can fit into their daily lives. What else would I have to say? I think that's approximately it. So this is kind of a, well, they used to say when I was in university many years ago, a glan on what Owen was saying, because I think what he was saying is all of it true, but the subtleties of it are difficult. And as I say, I would go to your advisor group, and I would recruit some of your advisors to recruit their buddies. I have a second anecdote. A person I taught at Algonquin many years ago ended up at Algonquin to reskill. And I asked him, what was your previous job? And it turned out that he had been a driver for the Soviet embassy. And since he was completely illiterate when I met him, he was the perfect choice to be a Canadian driver for the Soviet embassy, because he could not possibly have presented any security problem because he simply didn't have the literacy skills to do so. And when he decided to come to Algonquin to learn a new program, the Soviets asked him, "Oh, you must have a friend who would like to have a good job here. Why don't you send us a couple of your friends to interview?" Which is what he did, of course. And chances are my friend Ken's friends were equally unskilled in literacy and so on. So it was, again, I sometimes wonder whether Canadian diplomats would have the same insight in Moscow as we had, as they had in Ottawa, but that's another question. But anyway, I would suggest that people be recruited from your group to recruit, as it were, their friends to this task, because I think you might find it to be more effective. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about this.
Thank you. I mean, that's a really good point. I've taken many notes from your little speech, so thank you so much for your input. And I can definitely see how seniors would just want to engage with each other versus younger people like us. And I see the benefits as well as having the couple together, because they're together all the time, right? You're retired, you're spending all the rest of your time with your significant other. What a great activity then to be able to do this volunteer work together as a couple, right? And you can get up and look forward to that together, and you kind of have that person that's always by your side to kind of give you the motivation to keep volunteering your time.
But Jessica, I'm not trying to suggest that seniors don't want to work with, I don't want to work with younger people. They're very eager to work with younger people. It's just that for the recruiting, it's better to have a senior say, "This is fun because you get to work with younger people," rather than to have a younger person try to make the same case.
No, exactly. Yes. And that is how I took it. Sorry if I was
No.
sounded like I was a bit confused. I just want to see if you had anything else that you wanted to say or plug in about climate legacy. I know Owen.
Oh, yes, I do. Because
okay.
yes, thanks. Thanks for reminding me. Owen mentioned climate legacy. Jessica is putting in the chat a little blurb from climate legacy, because it's one of the things I'm on the edge of here in CARP. Betty Pluis is one of my neighbors, and I guess I'm part of her consulting group or something related to climate legacy. But they're eager to engage seniors as volunteers, and also as people who donate and conceivably leave a legacy to environmental causes. And as Owen has pointed out, they're a cross Canada organization. They've got a very ambitious plan to engage seniors across the country, and you may want to partner with them in relation to getting more senior advisors.
Thank you. And yes, I had the chance to meet with Betty this week.
Great, yeah.
With Climate Legacy, and that was a great connection for OETN to start. And from that, Peter has joined us. We're running a bit early on our time, but I know that you have to run at 11:30, so I thought maybe I could segue into Peter speaking. And I also met Peter through Climate Legacy in that meeting with Betty. So to start off, Peter Kroll is a member of the Citizen Climate Council, which is also known as C3. C3 is a group of 8 retired seniors who offer high-level strategic help to enhance the City of Ottawa's ability to move forward on climate change issues while engaging the citizens of Ottawa in the progress. So I'm sorry to throw you on the spot, Peter, but if you're ready to speak, I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, my mute is on. That's a first. Amazing. Okay. Citizen Climate Council, 8 people got together 3 years ago. We were all retired, but we're all sort of senior managers from the consulting industry and private sector and government. And we want to do something about climate change in the city of Ottawa. So we have been getting together every 2 weeks to look at the climate change master plan, energy evolution, all sorts of things. And we tried to advance climate change and give the city of Ottawa, both staff and council, recommendations on how to move forward. And the latest product that we did, I'll put it in the chat function after my talk here, is an accountability report. Now, the city of Ottawa has 159 commitments to climate change in the energy evolution and climate change master plan. And we decided to have a close look at those 159 commitments. And over a year and a half, we discovered that it's very difficult to find information from the city of Ottawa on how they're doing on climate change. Many other cities make very easy access to what they are doing, like Vancouver, Montreal, Halifax. They're very, very porous with their information. Calgary as well, but Ottawa less so. Anyway, we went through all the meeting minutes and audits, and it was laborious. It was hard work. It's very tough to find this information. And we produced an accountability report that has graphics and charts and all sorts of good things. It's not meant to be a fault finding exercise. C3 is constituted, has been formed to try to help the city in a collaborative and friendly way. And we want to develop a sort of a friendly partnership with them. So the report is now out. It's been sent to all the council members and key staff members and some NGOs around town, like cafes and things like that. And the findings are this, that the city of Ottawa actually has, when we were doing the study, not very much progress on a lot of their 159 commitments. Now that is changing because of the budget that just got passed by the city of Ottawa. They're having a climate lens now on their commitments. They've got $5 million a year for climate change activities, which is not really enough money, but it's a start compared to the last council. And we are in active conversations with a number of councillors and city groups around town to see where we can go with the climate change conversation. So the main message for you is that citizens have a really active role to play with the city of Ottawa, and we can't be seen as policy takers. We have to be seen as policy makers, and so that's been our role. That's been our main message, is that if we want change in the city, we've got to get involved. We've got to talk to our councillors. We've got to talk to staff. They're people like us. They've got responsibilities. They've got challenges, and they need to know what community groups are doing. And I applaud all of you for whatever you're doing to push the city in various directions, whether it's food security or housing or environmental issues. It's citizens have to get involved. And the more that we do get involved and engage with the city, the better it's going to be for all of us. And that's the key message. We've got to step up. And we talk about democracy. Well, democracy really means getting involved in the process, and it's hard work. Oh my God, it's hard work. And we're exhausted by it. It's not fun work. I'd rather be out skiing or skating or something. And grinding away on the policy front for the city of Ottawa is just exhausting, but there's good people there. And on the climate change side of things, for example, they've got a staff of about 10, and they're run off their feet. They've got so many challenges and commitments, whereas the city of Toronto has got a climate change staff of about 50. And they're taking climate change on in a much more aggressive way. Anyway, not to say that Ottawa can't punch above its weight. It's got a new council, new mayor, and this is the time for city groups to put up their hands and say, we want to help. So I'll just go get that accountability report and put it in the chat. And if you have questions about that, happy to respond to them.
Thank you very much, Peter. So I met Peter earlier this week, And as he was telling me the great work that C3 was doing with that accountability project, I thought of many people on this call and those who aren't able to make it here today. And I thought they'd also find what Peter and C3 is doing was very interesting and very like on the ground running. So I'll be happy to share this recording with those people that I know that would also love to learn more about C3 for you, Peter.
Yeah, it's great. Happy to help. I'm just posting the accountability report now. We had there it is. We had one of our members actually dug into his pockets and took his own funds to get a graphic designer to help design the report, so it was visually appealing to whoever was reading it. So we're committed.
Well, thank you for all of your amazing work. Does anyone have any questions for Peter or for Rudy while we wait for our next speaker to join the call? Laura.
Yeah, thanks. Peter, that was really enlightening. It's first I hear your organization, so I'm really impressed. I was wondering, what do you think is the biggest challenge for the city in terms of delivering on their commitments? Is it really a budget issue?
Yeah, it is. What gets done is in the budget. It's as simple as that. Whatever the priorities are reflected in the line items in a budget. And we only had $180,000. I think it was only $180,000 or $200,000, which for climate change in the city budget, and that was coming from the Ontario Hydro dividend, which becomes part of a climate change fund. But now we've got $5 million yearly, and that, I guess that'll grow. So I would say that it is a budget. That would be my first reply to you, is that the budget is the biggest challenge.
Great, thanks for that.
Any other questions?
But this really is the time to get in front of council and staff with good ideas and to make a positive relationship with them. There's a lot of new council. I think half the council is new, and they're finding their feet and learning what they need to do. So they're trying to take a drink from a fire hose at the moment, and they're very, very busy. They're always busy. But if you've got respective issues that need airing, now is the time to do it. And it's not scary to get in front of city committees. We've done that. We do it a lot. And you can, when a committee is meeting and there's an agenda item, you can put an agenda item there. You can make a presentation to the committee, and that goes to council. And so how else can we get our voices heard unless we start getting in front of the committees? And it's very easy to do. It's all done by Zoom.
Aida.
Yeah, again, while waiting for the next speaker, I attended recently a cafe meeting. I don't know, Peter, if you were there. Were you there? No.
I do go to cafe meetings. I don't know which one on your.
Anyway, the question was how we citizens could contribute to policy making. Just to echo your view that we should be policy creators, not just policy takers. And it was also shared that it was challenging we weren't sure what would be the most effective ways of making our views known to the city. Yes, speaking with our councillors would help, making presentations before committees. But there was a sentiment that the city maybe they weren't available or didn't have the resources, or they weren't sure how to engage with us. Yeah, there was that sentiment that there wasn't sure how to take in the various perspectives, various views coming from the citizens. Do you have any comments on this?
I mean, how to engage with the city? How?
As if there, someone said at that meeting that the city did develop an engagement plan with citizens, but there was no certainty on whether they were implementing it, whether they were ready, capable, available to receive the various inputs. I'm thinking here, what would be the most effective ways of organizing ourselves, or citizens to organize themselves? Or is it just simply a matter of people spontaneously, popping up and speaking with their counselors, for example?
Well, that's one option.
Yeah.
I think a collective voice is stronger than an individual voice, and there is cafes. So I would make recommendations to cafes that also make recommendations to the People's Official Plan, which has about 15 member organizations. And I just was looking at their memorandum of understanding, and which is being drafted as we speak. And it's all about what we're talking about, is making a stronger voice on policies that the city is addressing. It's a wide range of all the policies you can imagine, right? And the People's Official Plan is going to be a pretty effective platform for people to get involved and to amplify your message.
Thank you.
There's one thing that I want to say, and it's a bit of a contentious issue, but I've been a resident of Ottawa most of my life, except for some time overseas and things like that. And I've come to the conclusion that if you were to strip away everything in Ottawa that is federal, when I'm talking about that, if you're at 30,000 feet and you look down at the city of Ottawa and you take away Gatineau Park, take away the canal, take away the NCC, the museums, the galleries that are all federal, we'd be left with a fairly gray, uninspiring city. Save the art gallery, perhaps, maybe the new library. But we really, as a capital city, really aren't very progressive in our planning and our vision. In fact, Calgary is way ahead of us on climate change, the center of the oil industry, way ahead. And I just find that troubling. And so with a new council, we really have some opportunities now to kind of change that status. I saw a hand up, Rudy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the organizations that I belong to, every one of them has arranged a meeting with the new councillor. So your comment about drinking from the fire hose,
Yeah.
probably, I mean, it's very, very true. But I think this business of going and saying, look at here, I'm here in your office and I want to talk to you personally about this has a tremendous impact. Because it's not a bunch of information, it's interaction with a person who's showing their care for these issues. And our poor new councillor in West Carleton has had about 6 delegations from climate related people, from people that that I'm aware of. So
Right.
I mean the poor man he probably thinks there's no other issue except climate now.
Right. Yeah. I know they're human beings with families and stuff going on. So the key is to build a relationship. That's the first step before we start dumping on people and criticizing, is build a positive collaborative relationship.
A friend of mine says, have a cup of tea first.
Yep. Interaction is more important than transaction. That's what I learned when I was living in Africa.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything else to say to Peter or Rudy before we move on to our next speaker? Okay, so our next speaker is going to be Jim Birch, who has just recently joined the call. So I'll start by introducing you, Jim, and then I'll hand it over to you. So Jim started his early career in social and community work, while much of his work later focused on conservation. He has worked with people at local, national, and international levels, Putting this together, he developed a model for sustainability of urban-centered regions through involvement, individual initiative, and sharing. And Jim is the board's chair of Biosphere EcoCities Canada. So I'll hand it over to you, and Jim is going to speak about the importance of senior volunteers.
Thank you, Jessica. Can you hear me all right?
We
Is it
can.
okay? I'm okay? Good, okay, I won't use this. I was in a webinar this week on climate action, and it was very good. But almost everyone there was over 60. Why was that? Seniors make good volunteers. Reason one, seniors are not motivated by personal ambition. In the 1970s, I led creation of the first Gatineau Scout group. In our founding meeting, we took everybody that volunteered to be a beaver, cub, or scout leader. We didn't know them, but we accepted them. And then I learned about personal ambitions in volunteer groups. One woman came, she brought her husband, her best friend, and her brother, and they joined various sections. And shortly after that, they tried to take over the group. They worked against other leaders. They tried to change agreed upon program. They undermined volunteers who didn't agree with them. And they did things that upset the parents of the kids, such as drinking on scout trips. They almost destroyed the scout group. When this was happening, I talked to the minister whose church we used for all our events. And he explained to me that some people, when they get into the 30s and 40s, start to think that they haven't been successful or recognized as much as they should be in their work. So they join volunteer groups and they try to have power over other people. Yet in that same group, we had a senior gentleman who had retired. And he was friendly, he had good ideas and always willing to work. And that made a difference. And over 40 years of community work since then, I've seen many other examples of people like him, seniors who make great volunteers. Reason two, seniors have a great deal of experience. My crib notes are stapled, sorry. Whether they were housewives or business managers, seniors have many years under their belts. They know life. They've managed a budget for a household or a corporation. They know how to motivate children, employees, colleagues. They solve problems as they arrive. So they come to your NGO very well trained. I founded Ottawa Biosphere EcoCity in 2009 with a group of volunteers. One of them, Elaine, stayed with OBEC for the 10 years I led the group. She had been a manager and she had great ideas. She was also a very important source of advice for me as I stumbled through the experience of trying to develop a sustainability organization for the first time. As well, Elaine hosted our governance committee meetings at our house, always with tea and cookies. So Rudy would approve that, I'm sure. By the second year, other seniors were volunteering for OBEC, and they contributed greatly to the work. Bob, for example, was active on communications and outreach committee, and his friendships across the board with environmentalists was quite useful in developing partnerships. He also managed OBEC's database of sustainability projects and added hundreds of examples to the database. Elaine, Bob, Ted, Eric, seniors with experience were all great volunteers. Reason three, seniors have time to give to your organization. Most of them have retired from paid employment, and they're willing to devote many hours to what they think is a just cause. This is in sharp contrast with middle-aged volunteers who are usually stretched by work and family obligations. I noticed early in OBEC's operation that we had a bicameral distribution of volunteers. Most people were low or high on the spectrum. Many volunteers were in their 20s or even teenagers, and many were seniors. There are only a few in their 40s or 50s. Not only did the volunteer seniors seem to have more time, but also they know how to use that time wisely. Through life, they learned how to take shortcuts, how to recognize actions that were unlikely to succeed. So seniors were quite efficient. Another attribute of a good volunteer. Reason 4, seniors are good for young volunteers. Pardon me just a second. Seniors are good for young volunteers. Many young people in high school might think they have little in common with older people. But the young people in your organizations are different. They're open-minded and they want to learn. They're intrigued by the insight that seniors bring to developing projects. Your young volunteers, whether high school or university age, like their senior colleagues. At the same time, seniors have a great affinity for young volunteers. They marvel at their technical skills and are energized by their enthusiasm. In fact, combining youth and seniors in a project team or committee can bring out the best in both age groups. In conclusion, if you want volunteers without personal ambition, who have experience, who have time to give you and know how to use it, and who will complement your younger members, find some seniors. And the Porky Pig closing is that's all, folks. Nobody knows who Porky Pig is anymore. It's a shame. Friend of Bugs Bunny. You said 10 minutes, Jessica, is that about right?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Jim. Does anyone have any questions for Jim? If not, what I'm going to do, I know that I'm going to lose 2 of my speakers quite shortly because they have to jump off for other commitments. We're going to have an open discussion kind of Q&A session, but what I wanted to do is to quickly throw in a poll just to kind of gauge the age demographic of those who are joining us today. So I just launched it. It should be showing on your screen. If you could just quickly answer that for me, that would be great.
I notice you don't have 75 and over.
I'm sorry for not including that. I just didn't want it to be very long. Okay, thank you. I believe I would just be the only person that hasn't answered, it looks like. So I'm going to end the poll there. I just want to take a moment to thank our speakers and presenters just before people trickle off that need to for their commitments. I've appreciated everyone that was able to come. I've learned a lot so far, and I'm excited to learn more through this question discussion. And there's definitely been some great ideas shared that I definitely look forward to implementing. So thank you. So whenever anyone has to jump off, just feel free to jump off. You can say a little goodbye in the chat if you'd like. But I thought we can jump into the open discussion, questions and answers. And if we might end a bit early, that'll be nice. People can have an earlier lunch. So I'm going to hand it over to Owen, who's going to help me run these 3 questions. So Owen, if you want to ask the first question.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so just have a few questions. And the first one is, what do you see as the biggest challenge for senior/retiree volunteers, just generally, if anyone has? Jim.
Yeah. There's a couple. I think the first one would be technology. A lot of the new technology that's being used is difficult for people who didn't grow up with it, didn't learn it. I get frustrated with all the time I have to waste because I have to get to know how to use a new app and go all through these hoops to do it. Many seniors are worse off than I am in that regard. when we work, we learn to figure things out also without technology. We were given a problem and we thought about it. We didn't go to an app to give us an answer. So it's a different mental process as well. So I guess that's my top two.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, Rudy, do you want to add in?
Well, mute. Okay, I've unmuted now. I agree with Jim. I think the technology is an issue, but I also think the business, it's really important to give people concrete things to do. Because if you, I know that from Friends of the Carpills and various other things here in Carp, that if you go in and say, well, I'd kind of like you to sort of work on climate issues, people think, oh dear God, what could that involve? But if you come to them and say, would you be interested in completing this Fire Smart questionnaire to assess whether your house is in danger from wildfires, it'd probably take you 20 minutes, half an hour. They can do that. It's concrete. Do you want to look at these turtle nesting boxes for us? They need to be checked every 2 days during the nesting season, which starts about here. It would mean walking on the trail for about 15 minutes every 2 days for 3 weeks. That kind of very concrete thing. And I think that's actually something that Jim has said to me a couple of times about organizing things, that if you make things very concrete and they're likely to be manageable for people, and they think, okay, yeah, I could do that. That's not a big deal. Whereas if you're kind of open-ended, do you want to join our campaign against Doug Ford? Oh, I didn't say that. God knows what that might involve.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that's like just general to volunteers, like everyone. Like I think we've all probably had volunteering opportunities where you sign up for something and they just give you a weird open-ended list of things you could possibly do. And then you just sort of like, well, I don't really know what to do, so I'm going to do nothing. And just like, yeah. Did anyone else want to weigh in at all with challenges or like barriers? Judy?
I think I don't know if I'd classify this as a challenge for seniors. I think it's a challenge for any volunteer in any organization that wants to engage them meaningfully. I think that Rudy made some excellent points. I would just add to them about providing any volunteer with clear instructions, a beginning and an end. And it doesn't just apply to the seniors, but let's say the client group in this context needs to have coaching and a clear set of expectations about how they should be behaving towards their volunteers, so that both parties come to the table with a better sense of what the purpose of the experience is, what the volunteer can give, and what the client organization needs to do to make the best use of that volunteer. Just a side note, besides it's managing the expectations of both parties. Aside, two other comments would be to make sure that the experience that's being offered to the volunteers is one that they can take on. And I remember with one organization, I live almost downtown. I was asked if I could drive out to a night meeting in Carp in the winter. Now, if it had been a summer meeting, I could have gone, but I'm not going to do 40 minutes in the dark in the winter. It's just, so that's an example. Another example is physical activity. I know Rudy has fit seniors out hiking trails, and that's great. But an 8-hour day on their feet, that might be a bit too far for the senior. I think And just the last one, and in the context of, no, I can't remember, I think Peter alluded to this about the group that came in to kind of take over control of the organization. I think, again, the project sponsors have some responsibility, not responsibility, because it may be beyond what they can manage, but you want to make that a pleasant experience. And I know sometimes tempers can fray, or tensions arise, or, you know, things start to run off the track. And if they do that routinely, any volunteer is going to say, oh, I don't know if I want to continue with this group. So those are just my, and as I say, I don't know if these are limitations for seniors. I think they're more in the whole experience. And that's all.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a really interesting point. Definitely. I'm going to move on to the second question, unless anyone had anything further to add. Question 1. Cool. Yeah, so the second question we've got posted here is, what tools do you feel are needed for successful volunteerism? Let's post that in the chat as well. Oh, and I also noticed Lola just posted something in the chat regarding technology. Yeah, I think, yeah, technology as well in terms of barriers and challenges for seniors specifically, it seems to be a fairly common thread. Yeah, does anyone have any comments to do with tools you feel are needed to be a successful volunteer? Yeah, Jim?
I can give you a couple. When you hear about a volunteer, realize that they're special. If somebody's planning to volunteer with you, give them an appropriate amount of information on your organization and on the task that you're requesting. If you can, do an onboarding. You can start off with just a meeting at a coffee shop at the beginning, and then you feel each other out. And then give them an idea of where they'll be. If they're going to be on a team, or if they're just going to be in a general group, what does the group do? So that they're oriented, because they're coming into something blind. They don't know what's ahead of them. So try to give them an orientation session, like you would a first day at university, or something like that. I don't want to monopolize the talk though, so somebody else can talk. Ask Nasha, she has lots of good ideas.
You've been thrown on the spot there, Nasha, if you want to, but I won't force you to jump forward.
Sure, maybe I can add a couple things. Recently at BEC, we've tried recruiting a number of volunteers. And so, like Jim mentioned, having an orientation session is really helpful. I usually try to set up a document in a folder that they can easily access, giving them kind of clear instructions how to access it, so that, you know, they can use those shared tools. And we also have a Slack channel, so we'll invite our volunteer members, if they know how to use Slack and they'd like to use Slack, to also use Slack as a means of communication. And also just asking them what kinds of tools that they would find helpful, and then setting those up, and also providing the orientation and support they need to use those effectively. Just a couple tips for now.
Perfect, thanks, Nasha. Ida, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, when I worked for the federal government, we had volunteers, and we had paid interns, students, and we had a very formal process of providing orientation. In the first week, it was very extensive orientation, where we discussed the culture, the processes, the structure. We gave them good background information about the department. So I use that, you know, I use similar process when welcoming my volunteers. I have a formal agreement, actually, called volunteer agreement, quite detailed, where I lay out all expectations, what the volunteer should expect to learn, what they want to learn. And that I begin with the draft agreement, show it to the volunteer before I finalize it. So it is co-developed. It's like almost like a work agreement where everything is clear. I even try to find out when they're available. Availability has been at time an issue with some students, but I try to be clear. So to me, clarity is a very, very important criterion. So they know what to expect. I even include in the discussion when things don't go as well as we both would like, what should we do? How should we address it? So people aren't comfortable talking about conflict, but sometimes conflicts do arise, differences of opinion and how. So I have a formal process and it works most of the times. The main issue, although we're not talking about issues here, but I can share, has been at times availability. And then when this arises, we discuss it and decide if we want to pursue the agreement, the contract, the agreement, or make adjustments, make changes, but make things very clear and engage them from the beginning, even before they start, to define together what the experience could be. So to make it, as Judy said, pleasant, to make it worth their while. I mean, they're giving you your time, their time. They have to get a lot out of it too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think clarity really is the big buzzword there with like just any volunteering opportunity. Jim, did you want to add something as well?
Yes, I have to tell you about my first day in the federal government as an employee. I showed up at my boss's office and he looked at me and he says, "Oh, you're here." And I said, "Yes." And we looked at each other for a while and he said, "Well, there's an office down the hall with a spare desk, so that you'll be there." He says, "So take the day to settle in." So I went down and there was a desk and a chair. I found the washroom and 5 minutes had been were gone. I just wandered around. People said, "What's your job?" I said, "I don't know." 2 days later, I went back to see my boss and I said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" He says, "Oh, go see Jeff in the Carling building." He says, "He'll have some ideas." So that's how it began. It sounds unreal, but that's true. Thank you.
It's almost reassuring to hear that while you can have that experience with volunteers, you can also get that with the federal government as well. It sounds like no one's really very organized ever. So, with that, we can move to the final question, which I think we've more or less answered inadvertently throughout this discussion. But just if anyone else has anything to add, and the question is, how can organizations better support senior volunteers specifically? And if you have any past experience that you'd like to share with the group of like maybe where an organization's had a positive way of supporting their senior volunteers or a negative one. I don't know if anyone has any comments or things to say. Like I say, I think we've touched on quite a lot of comments already with supporting. I think, yeah. Oh yeah, Jim, if you want to weigh in again.
Yeah, sorry to talk so much, but there was a space.
It's appreciated.
This is important for seniors, probably for most volunteers as well, is to say thank you fairly often. Not just all the time, but when they've done something, say thanks for doing that, or I appreciate that, or I like that report. That's very motivational for people.
No, yeah, that's so important. And I think it is a case of there really is like there should be a very general rule book for dealing with volunteers as a whole. And I think just asking people when they join sort of what they're willing to do and what they're capable and kind of their limitations is just a good way to gauge like what you're going to be asking volunteers to get involved in.
We also gave out volunteer awards at our annual general meeting every year, and we give one set for team leaders, and we give other people for particular efforts. We managed to cover most of the people. You know, over a couple of years, everybody would get an award. It wasn't expensive to do, just a printed certificate, sometimes framed. So yeah, volunteers tend to get forgotten. And I don't know if in a combined staff volunteer organization, if it's even more so. I'd like to have that opportunity to learn that. But we're at that stage now where we're getting volunteers.
I think that just thinking back here, I think I've been involved with 3 community-based or maybe academic projects where the lead on the project committed to myself as a volunteer and presumably to other people that the results of the project would be shared. You know, they wouldn't ride off. Well, I took it as a pledge that they wouldn't ride off into the sunset, that I would see the end product. And in all 3, nothing ever came. Nothing ever came. In one project, I actually, I can't remember how, but I became aware that a final report had been written, and I looked at the contacts interviewed at the back and contacted them and said, hey, did you know this report was out? And they said, no, we didn't know. We thought we'd get it. So I gave it to them too. So it goes back to, it's a two-way street, and the contracting group, the lead group, needs, carries a responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a good point. Did anyone else have anything additional to add to the discussion?
I have a little gift almost always to volunteers. I buy them gift card. I ask them if they like, I don't know, Tim Horton or any one of those. And in one case, the volunteer said, I don't. So I planted trees in his name. So there were some little token gifts always at the end of the term or the agreement. So saying thank you, James. Yes, million times. Acknowledge, appreciate the contribution.
Yeah, James, if you want to.
Yeah, the other thing you can do in your organization is have somebody who is responsible for volunteers. They help to recruit, they take care of them, they think about awards. You can also, if you can afford it could be the same person, have a social convener. So every now and then you can have something happening. It could be a potluck. We've done potlucks in the past. It could be a seminar where everybody comes and does some role playing about trying something different and talking about it, and even fun and games. So bring some fun into your organization, and everybody likes fun, and they don't lose the appetite for it when they hit 60.
Just Judy, before we leave, I sent you a little message in the chat, but before we end the meeting, I'm so sorry, well, I missed the name of your organization.
I'm not with an organization. I have volunteered in the past, though.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone so much for adding to the discussion. I think I'll probably hand it back to Jessica. You want to wrap things up?
Yeah, so we'll wrap things up. We can end it early here. As Owen said, thank you. I appreciate everyone for joining the NCENN today. We couldn't do it without all of you, so I really appreciate those of you who have showed up and who have been here throughout the session. I feel like it's been a very productive and a great learning session. So I'm taking a lot away with me, and I'm looking forward to implementing everything that I've learned from the session for OETN and finding some senior advisors for a group. So if anyone has any further questions for me, feel free to email me. I'll just put my email in the chat again for OETN. And if there's nothing else, then I'll let everyone go. I'll leave the floor open for a minute or two if anyone has anything else to add. If there's any announcements for your groups coming up, any events that you'd like to speak about, the floor is now for you.
No, but I want to say that it was a treat to see your cat today. I love cats, and they made me so happy whenever they showed up. So thank you for including them. This is real inclusion.
There you go, exactly. I also enjoy the cats. They are quite interesting to watch sometimes during meetings, and it's nice to kind of have them included. That's one nice thing that came out of this hybrid model of being able to work at home and in the office space, is being able to see people's animals when they're at home. I actually saw Jim's dog that made a quick appearance when he first joined. He has a very nice looking dog.
Thank you. We don't know what he is, but we like him.
Well, that's all that matters.
So Jessica, you mentioned we could make some announcements while at BAC. So the organization Jim and I are at, we've been talking about senior volunteers and recruiting some folks to help us with some of our projects. We're a national organization, but we have initiatives happening in Ottawa, Toronto, Brampton, and then Edmonton, Vancouver. I don't think too many people here are that far, but if you're in Ontario and you might like to volunteer with us or know of other senior colleagues or friends that might want to volunteer with us, it'd be great if you could share the word. And maybe Jessica, I can share a poster with you that you could share to the participants of the meeting today.
Yeah, definitely. I should also add before anyone goes, if you joined the call without registering to the event, if you could just put your email in the chat, that way we could be in touch following this meeting as well. I will stop recording here and I'll call the meeting to an end.